She never spoke about the binoculars, never explained why she carried combat optics to sort supplies. Staff Sergeant Williams assumed Isabella Torres was just another clerk with delusions of grandeur, until the day he looked through those scratched lenses and found the inscription that made his blood run cold. Numbers that told a story no supply clerk should know. Numbers that proved everything he thought he knew about her was a lie. The scarred binoculars hung from Isabella Torres' neck like a talisman, catching harsh fluorescent light as she sorted ammunition. Staff Sergeant Williams had been watching her for months, wondering why the quiet clerk carried those beaten optics everywhere. He assumed she was just another wannabe soldier playing dress-up in the rear echelon. But when curiosity finally got the better of him and he peered through those damaged lenses, the etching inside made his blood run cold. 247 m. Target eliminated. That distance belonged to a legend. A ghost story whispered among snipers. Forward operating base Falcon Ridge buzzed with morning activity as Isabella Torres arrived for her 0600 shift. The supply depot was controlled chaos, forklifts weaving between crates while soldiers shouted orders over diesel engines. Isabella moved through it like a phantom, her worn boots silent on concrete. The binoculars swayed with each step, black metal housing scarred by years of hard use. She'd carried them for 4 years now, since her transfer to this administrative posting. Most assumed they were a memento from her brief combat stint before injury relegated her to desk duty. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams watched from across the depot, coffee steaming in morning air. At 36, Williams was a career soldier with 16 years and opinions about everything. Torres' habit of carrying those binoculars everywhere struck him as pretentious, like she was trying too hard to maintain connection to warrior culture she could no longer be part of. Playing soldier again, Torres? Williams called as Isabella approached the ammunition staging area. His voice carried that mix of authority and condescension senior NCOs had perfected. Several soldiers looked up, eager for entertainment. Isabella didn't respond immediately. She never did. Instead, she pulled out her clipboard and began checking serial numbers, movements precise and economical. The binoculars clinked softly against her body armor. "I'm talking to you, specialist," Williams pressed, walking closer. "What's with the binoculars? Planning to spot targets from a supply room?" A few soldiers chuckled. Isabella's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but she continued working. She'd learned that engaging Williams' taunts only encouraged him. "Maybe she's bird-watching," suggested Private Martinez. "Lots of interesting species around here." Williams shot Martinez a warning look. The private immediately found his boots fascinating. Williams turned back to Isabella. "Seriously though, Torres, what's the story?" It looked like they've been through a meat grinder. This time, Isabella looked up, meeting his gaze briefly before returning to her clipboard. In that instant, Williams caught something unexpected. Not embarrassment or defiance, but something deeper, colder. Something that made him aware of how quiet the depot had become. Williams took the binoculars with exaggerated care, making a show of delicate handling. The metal was warm from her body heat, heavier than they looked. The housing was badly scarred, with deep gouges speaking of hard use and harsh conditions. Jesus, Torres. These things looked like they went through a war zone. If only he knew, Isabella thought. She watched as Williams raised them to his eyes, adjusting focus with confidence of someone experienced with military optics. He scanned the depot, then focused distant, testing lens clarity. "Not bad," he admitted grudgingly. "Glass is still good, even if the housing looks like hell." He was about to lower them when something caught his eye. There, etched into metal frame below the right eyepiece, were numbers and letters scratched with careful precision. The scratches were old, worn smooth by handling, but still legible. Williams felt his mouth go dry reading the inscription. 247 m. Target eliminated. Below that, coordinates and a date from 4 years ago, a date corresponding with a mission that had become legend in certain circles. A story whispered among snipers and special operations personnel. The binoculars suddenly felt heavier, as if weight of their history had physically manifested. He lowered them slowly, finding Isabella's face with new understanding. She watched him with that steady gaze, but now he could see what he'd missed before. This wasn't someone playing soldier. This was someone who'd been to places most people only had nightmares about. 3,247 meters, Williams said quietly. That's, even with modern equipment, a shot at nearly 3,250 meters required skills few possessed. It required understanding of ballistics beyond textbook knowledge, intuitive grasp of how wind and temperature and humidity affected bullet flight over that distance. More than that, it required mental discipline, allowing someone to remain calm while taking another human being's life from a distance so great the target would never know they were being watched. It was special warfare, clinical, precise, ruthless. Williams had served in combat units, seen violence and death, but never operated at that level. The closest he'd come was hearing stories in late-night sessions, tales of impossible shots and ghost-like operators who could kill from distances. The way Isabella moved through the depot was different. No wasted motion, no unnecessary noise. Her situational awareness was remarkable, automatically adjusting path to avoid collisions while tracking multiple conversations without appearing to eavesdrop. Even her workspace reflected different mindset. Where other clerks had photos and personal items, Isabella's area was spartanly organized. Everything had purpose and place. Her monitor was positioned for clear depot view while minimizing glare. Her chair allowed quick movement in any direction. These weren't habits of career administrative personnel. These were practices of someone who'd learned to survive, where moments in attention could mean difference between life and death. Williams wondered about her story, about circumstances bringing her from whatever elite unit she'd served with to relative safety of Supply Depot. Most soldiers transitioning from combat to administrative roles did so because of injury or psychological trauma. Williams waited, understanding that pushing would undo any progress. "It was my 4th deployment," she finally said, voice so low he had to lean forward. "Syria, 2021. Our team provided overwatch for a humanitarian convoy moving through contested territory. The convoy got ambushed about 9 clicks from our position. We could see the attack developing through our scopes. Insurgents moving to finish off survivors." Williams held his breath, caught in quiet intensity of her story. "I'd been tracking one insurgent commander through my binoculars for 30 minutes. He was directing the attack, coordinating different groups. Taking him out would disrupt their operation, give convoy survivors time to establish defensive position and call support." She sipped water, hands steady despite memory weight. Range was extreme, almost 3,250 meters. Wind was variable. Temperature changing as sun moved across valley. But I'd watched him long enough to predict his movements, understand his patterns. Williams realized she was describing something beyond technical skill. Level of observation and analysis bordering on supernatural, ability to read human behavior from distances, reducing people to tiny figures in telescopic sight. "I called a shot for our sniper. Walked him through every adjustment, wind speed, direction, elevation, lead time. When he fired, I knew immediately it was good. Bullet took 5 seconds to reach target. 5 seconds. Time for the insurgent commander to take several more breaths, shout more orders, live more moments. Completely unaware death was traveling toward him at 3 times speed of sound. The ambush collapsed after that," Isabella continued. "Without their leader coordinating, different groups lost cohesion. Convoy extracted with minimal casualties." Williams was beginning to understand weight those binoculars carried. They weren't just tool or a symbol of former skills. They were a reminder of lives saved and taken, of moments when split-second decisions had consequences rippling outward in ways never fully understood. "What happened to your sniper?" he asked. Williams felt a surge of respect for the woman across from him. She'd been dealing with loss he was only beginning to understand, with dignity and quiet strength he found humbling. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think what you're doing here matters too. Those ammunition shipments you track, they end up in hands of soldiers depending on that equipment to stay alive. You're still saving lives, just differently." Isabella looked at him with something like surprise, as if she hadn't expected that insight from someone who'd been tormenting her. "Thank you," she said simply. Over following weeks, Williams found his relationship with Isabella changing. Knowledge of her background created different dynamic, one based on mutual respect rather than his previous authority and condescension mixture. He began noticing other things about her work previously overlooked. Her inventory management was remarkably accurate, with discrepancy rates far below base average. She seemed to have intuitive understanding of supply logistics beyond official training. More importantly, he saw how other soldiers responded to her. The quiet competence he'd mistaken for passivity was actually leadership, getting things done without drawing attention. Younger soldiers sought her advice, not because of rank, but because they instinctively recognized expertise. Isabella had also begun opening up slightly, participating in conversations she'd previously avoided. Story of her binoculars seemed to have created bridge between former life and current role, allowing her to integrate compartmentalized parts of herself. Several months later, Williams received a call from the base commander's office, requesting a meeting about Isabella's personnel file. He arrived to find not just the colonel, but also a major from intelligence and a captain from special operations. That evening, Williams found Isabella finishing daily inventory reports. The familiar sight of her working methodically through checklists had become comforting, symbol of reliability and competence in an often chaotic world. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her desk. Isabella saved her work and turned to face him, expression curious but patient. "I had a meeting with the base commander today," Williams began. "About you." He saw concern flicker across her face and quickly moved to reassure. "It's good news. They want to offer you a new assignment, something that would let you use your specialized skills to train other soldiers." Williams explained the proposed training position details, watching as Isabella's expression shifted from concern to interest to something that might have been hope. "They want me to teach?" she asked, voice carrying wonder suggesting she'd never considered such possibility. "They want you to share expertise with soldiers who could benefit from it," Williams clarified. "Help them develop skills that could keep them alive in combat situations." Isabella was quiet for a long moment, hand unconsciously touching the binoculars around her neck. Williams could almost see her weighing possibilities, considering how this opportunity might fit with her sense of purpose and identity. "Would I still be able to carry these?" she asked, indicating the binoculars. "I think they'd be expected," Williams replied with a smile. Hard to teach long-range observation without proper equipment. For the first time since he'd known her, Isabella smiled back, genuine expression of happiness that transformed her entire appearance. "When do they want an answer?" she asked. "No rush," Williams assured her. "Take whatever time you need." But he could see in her expression that she'd already decided. The opportunity to return to meaningful work, to use her skills helping other soldiers, was exactly what she'd been missing. 3 months later, Williams attended graduation ceremony for first class of students in Isabella's long-range observation course. He watched with pride as soldiers who'd arrived with basic skills demonstrated advanced techniques that would serve them well in combat situations. Isabella stood at front of group, binoculars catching light as she addressed her students. She'd found her place again, not as elite operator she'd once been, but as something equally valuable. Teacher and mentor who could pass critical skills to next generation of soldiers. Williams thought about the journey bringing them all to this point, about assumptions and prejudices that had nearly prevented him from recognizing treasure working in his supply depot. It was a reminder that people were often much more complex and capable than current circumstances might suggest. The binoculars around Isabella's neck were no longer just a reminder of who she'd been. They'd become symbol of who she was becoming. The etching inside, 3-247M, target eliminated, would always represent extraordinary achievement from her past. But now, they also represented something more, bridge between old life and new possibilities, tool connecting experience with future potential. As ceremony concluded and graduates dispersed, Williams approached Isabella to offer congratulations. She was surrounded by students and instructors, clearly comfortable in her new role as expert and educator. "Congratulations," he said when he finally had a moment alone with her. "You've built something really special here." "Thank you," Isabella replied, voice carrying contentment he'd never heard before. "For giving me a chance to find my way back." Williams understood she wasn't just talking about training position, but about entire journey bringing her to this point. It had begun with his curiosity about her binoculars, continued through recognition of her true capabilities, and culminated in this new opportunity to serve meaningfully. "You found your own way," he corrected gently. "I just tried to stay out of the way once I figured out who you really were." The binoculars that had once made her target for ridicule had become symbol of knowledge and capability. The scarred metal housing remained testament to journey from elite operator to supply, clerk to instructor and mentor. The etching would always read 3-247M. Target eliminated. Reminder of capabilities that had once defined her identity. But now those same binoculars represented something new. Bridge between past and future, between individual achievement and collective service. They were proof that sometimes the most powerful weapons are those carrying weight of history and wisdom of those who came before, and that respect must be earned through performance rather than assumptions about someone's current role. In the end, Staff Sergeant Williams had learned something valuable about seeing clearly, both through optical devices and through fog of assumption and prejudice that could obscure true worth of people around us. The story of Isabella's binoculars had become a reminder that every soldier had story worth knowing and contributions worth recognizing, regardless of current assignment or apparent limitations.